Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Beer Geek Nation. I'm your host Chris. Thank you so much for joining me once again for my look at the best / most disappointing beers of 2011. Basically what I'm going to do for you guys is give you my top 5 beers of 2011, and these were the beers that really just stood up, knocked me on my ass, or really just blew me away. And then I'm going to give you guys my 5 most disappointing beers. And again, these aren't necessarily the worst beers of the year, just big disappointments, things I was expecting big things out of, and just, they fell flat. Without further ado, let me get into it. I'll get into my top 5 beers of 2011. And again, these were beers that just blew me away. Number 5 was a big surprise for me. It was Odell's Mercenary Double IPA. To me, it was basically a less boozy, year-round hop slam. That's had the same hop profile, very similar malt profile. Just awesome stuff. It's cheap, it's year-round. Number 4 was Perpetual IPA from Trogs. This was really a game-changing double IPA for them. It was a combination of a West Coast IPA. It was a combination of a middle-of-the-country IPA. Awesome malt backbone. A hop profile that Trogs has really never used previously, and it just worked really nicely. I think it's an awesome seasonal release for them, and I look forward to it again. Just great stuff. Number 3 was the Breweries Black Tuesday. Wow. 18.5% this year. This beer just blew me away. The flavors were constantly changing as you went through the bottle. Just overly complex, big fruits, and the barrel characters. Just amazing stuff, and definitely worth the hype. Number 2 was Bootleggers Knuckle Sandwich. Wow, this was just an absolute Simcoe bomb, and this one really blew me away. Just an absolute West Coast astringent, cat pee type smelling beer, big malt backbone, super fresh, and a really small brewery, and just an awesome double IPA. Just outstanding stuff. All right, guys, my number 1 beer of 2011. This was an easy one for me. As soon as I had it, I knew it was going to be. It was Alpine's Exponential Hoppiness. It was technically a triple IPA, coming in 11% alcohol by volume. It had a hop profile like no other. It had a West Coast hop profile, an East Coast hop profile, it had a middle of the country hop profile. 11%. You didn't taste that alcohol at all. It had a huge malt backbone, and then on top of that, they aged it on oak cubes, which really added a whole nother level of complexity to it. Just outstanding stuff. Not only was it the best beer of 2011, it's definitely one of the best beers I've ever had, if not the best beer I've ever had, and definitely the best double / triple IPA that I've ever had, without a doubt. It's coming out again in about a week or 2, so you guys are going to get it fresh. Definitely trade for that one. I think it's awesome stuff. Now let's get into the most disappointing beers of 2011. These are just the most disappointing beers that just should have been better, or deserved better, or ones that I just don't think should have been released. They're just kind of a waste of money, or just, they fall flat. I'll start from the bottom. I have 5 here. I'll start from the bottom and work up. Number 5, so I guess the least most disappointing, was Rogue's Voodoo Donut Maple Bacon Ale. With a name like that and this big pink bottle, you would think they would make something special. It just didn't have a whole lot of flavor to it. It had a little bit of smokiness, but it didn't balance it with any sweetness, as you would think from a maple bacon ale, or I don't know, it just didn't work for me. It just didn't have a whole lot of flavor like the name would suggest, so I thought it just kind of meh. Sierra Nevada's Optimum. I reviewed this really early in 2010, I think in February. And again, this is one of the ones, if you call a beer Optimum, it better be hoppy. To me, this just wasn't hop forward at all for double IPA. They did use whole cone hops, so you're not going to get that bite, but it just didn't live up to the name for me. It didn't live up to the hype that Sierra Nevada made it this big, hoppy beer. It just didn't do it for me. Number 3, and again back to Sierra Nevada, was their Ovila series, and this includes a double, the Saison, and the quadruple. They were perfect examples of the style, completely middle of the road, safe entries for them. But being that it was a charity beer, I would have hoped they would have stepped it up and done something a little different. And now that I hear they're putting them in barrels, I think that's going to be a big, step for those beers. So hopefully they'll release those in bottles, but I really doubt it. So that series in general was just a big flop for me. I don't know, just not bad, just meh. Number 2, the number 2 most disappointing beer of 2011 was Dogfish Heads to Hank It. And let me say number 2 and number 1 are, I think, interchangeable. Number 2 was, Dogfish Heads to Hank It. I think it just, for the money, for what it was supposed to be, was just bad. I mean, it was just tasted like split pea soup. Didn't have a whole lot of flavor. 4.5%. You know, you're not even getting a good buzz on it as a bonus or whatever, since the beer was bad. It just wasn't very good. And I would be surprised if they kept making that beer. And the number one, the most disappointing beer of 2011 was Dogfish Head's Faithful Ale. The beer that they brewed for Pearl Jam's 20th anniversary for their 10 album, one of my favorite albums, one of the albums I grew up with. I was expecting a whole lot out of that beer, you know, a Belgian pale ale with currants and all that stuff. Just not very good. Not a whole lot of flavor. It tasted like fake Kool-Aid with kind of a grainy undertone to it. Just not what I was hoping out of it. So that's it, guys. The most disappointing beers of 2011, best beers of 2011. Thank you for watching again, and stick around for all of 2012. Got a bunch of big beers coming up, got more homebrew videos coming up, tours and trips and a whole bunch of good stuff. So guys, stay tuned. We got more contests coming up as well. And remember folks, life is too short. Drink amazing beers. Cheers.